千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we delve deeply into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. So let's start with the ending, a proper ending of our discussion on chapter 41. What did we talk about before? Well, as usual, we began by looking at the actual chapter, not just a translated version, but the original text as well. And I think everyone remembers that we did a lot of analysis of the original characters to find the similar repeating characters from line to line, using that to help us divide it up into 3 distinct sections. So we went line by line through the sections, explaining each line and some of the characters, and we were able to get to the very bottom of the chapter. Last time, we also concluded our discussion of the main body of the chapter, which was about the 12 signs of the high-level individual. Chapter 41 began with a discussion on the different levels of people that come into contact with the Tao. The high level, the mid level, and the low level. Then 41 went into details about how high-level people cultivate the Tao, but it may not be so obvious or clear to the other levels. Therefore, the 12 signs of the high-level individual was something that we went through in quite a bit of detail. In the chapter itself, they range from line 9 down to line 20. So we categorize them as the 12 signs of the high-level person. Now, the ending section, the last third of the chapter, when transitioned from the high-level person to characteristics of the Tao. And this was because Lao Tzu wanted to highlight the characteristics of the Tao that high-level person would emulate in order to have the 12 signs. So there's overlap between the 12 signs and the last section. And you'll see from line 17 to line 20, there's the same character starting each line. That character is Da, which means big or great or grand or vast. In this case, it is just great, as in the great Tao. The great characteristics of the Tao as it applies to individuals. And therefore, what we wanted to do, what I decided to end the chapter on in this concluding section, was to talk about how the high-level person emulates the Tao. And because of the descriptions of the different levels that we've had, the discussions that we had, I also wanted to highlight for everyone how the low-level person will go off in a different direction, different from the high-level person. And we summarize those as well in a couple of key slides. So this is us zooming in on the last part of chapter 41. And you can see that we went from line 17 all the way to the very end, line 23. This is the last part. And then for all of these characteristics of the Tao, we talked about how the high-level cultivators would emulate the Tao, applying those characteristics to themselves. Whereas the low-level people would actually go in the opposite direction. So the great Tao follows universal principles. This comes from the expression 大方, which had a different meaning in ancient times. In modern Mandarin, 大方 would be someone who is generous, for instance. The ancient meaning had nothing to do with that. Ancient meaning was about how the great square, quote unquote, indicating an adherence to principles, to natural laws. In emulating that, high-level cultivators follow their own code of honor, whereas low-level people are full of excuses. So in a similar way, Tao cultivators also noted that circles are all around existence, all around reality. It's one important aspect of the Tao. Curves, great circles, cycles of nature. So this inspires the high-level cultivators to treat other people with the great circle as well, which in this case means the soft and gentle touch. So in contrast to that, we have all seen how low-level people would be the opposite, that they would often be aggressive, demanding, even bullying and demeaning, putting down everyone else in order to elevate themselves. And then we also talked about how nature takes its time to produce the most spectacular works that we can see out in nature. So in the same way, and inspired by this example, Tao cultivators know that they have to take their time to build themselves up. Low-level people, quite the contrary, are often in a rush. And lastly, on this slide, we spoke of the great silence of the Tao. Inspired by this, high-level cultivators have no need to talk about themselves. Their works, their actions, their deeds speak louder than any bragging, any boasting they can possibly get into. Low-level people, we know, are the very opposite. They have to talk about themselves. They have to talk about themselves all the time, loudly, repeatedly, to everyone. So that's one of the two slides that we went through last time about the Tao high-level cultivators and low-level cultivators. So to wrap it up, we also spoke of 大象. And I mentioned that in modern Mandarin, when you say 大象, people assume you're talking about elephants. Here, though, in the ancient context, 大象 is the great image, has nothing at all to do with elephants. It has to do with the great image of the Tao, which is the reflection of the Tao at every level of reality. That great image, like the Tao itself, is formless, shapeless. It's not a thing. Inspired by this, high-level cultivators also want to be formless, flexible in the ultimate sense, flowing everywhere like water toward a pre-decided destination. In contrast to that, we know low-level people are usually inflexible, bureaucratic, dogmatic. Now, low-level people will look at that inflexibility, that stubbornness, and think that it signifies strength. But real strength, from the Tao perspective, is not being stubborn. or being brittle, but being ultimately flexible like water, the ultimate strength, the real strength. And then we also talked about the Tao cannot be seen. High-level cultivators have no need to be seen, whereas low-level people must be seen. Same with name in terms of fame, celebrity. High-level cultivators don't really have a need for that. If it comes, that's fine, flow with it. If it doesn't really matter. Whereas low-level people are obsessed about their image to other people, their perception by other people. They seek external validation. If you see a spiritual teacher who is so obsessed with that they constantly need to find some kind of validation from external sources. So one example is that if a spiritual teacher is constantly parading around name dropping about, high level, maybe government bureaucrats that endorse them, yes, this is actually quite common, then right off the bat, you know that they are not the high level cultivators of the Tao that perhaps they appear to be. Lastly, we know that the Tao excels in giving to everyone and everything, all living things. And the Tao completes everything. Inspired by that, Tao cultivators are also looking to give and be compassionate to everyone and to finish what they start, to complete their work. Whereas low-level people are overwhelmingly concerned with giving to themselves and always leave a mess for others to clean up. And I think it is a certainty that as you look around in this world, look around at how things are today, you will be able to easily see examples of such people. As to who they are, that is left as an exercise for the individual students. But just by paying attention, just by looking at the world through the eyes of the Tao, everything that Lao Tzu talks about comes into clear focus. It is as if he is addressing us directly across 2,500 years. So now we're done with our recap, and it is time to go into the final part of our discussion on 41. And we always do this. We always do a paraphrase of a chapter, and the paraphrase is not meant to be an exact translation. We've already done that. It is meant to be an exact expression of the meaning, the essence of the chapter. So let's take a look. We start out, as I mentioned, with the differences between higher level of people, the mid-level, and the lower level of people. So how would we paraphrase that? Here's what I would like to offer. When higher level individuals hear about the Tao, the teaching resonates with them, so they apply it to life and practice it diligently. When mid-level individuals hear about the Tao, they do not identify with it quite as much. So they may apply it once in a while, but forget all about it the rest of the time. When low-level individuals hear about the Tao, they react with laughter and ridicule because the wisdom of the Tao is completely contrary to the way they think. The opposite is also true. What they accept for themselves would not be the Tao. Now let's go to the second section. In the second section, we begin to get into the 12 signs. 12 signs of the high-level individual, putting the focus not on the differences between the different levels, but just on the higher levels, to stick to the positive, to talk about what we ought to do. So this is the way that Lao Tzu would approach the topic of what we can do to become, to go to a higher level ourselves. Here's the paraphrase. There are ancient sayings that speak to the different levels. They tell us that the Tao is quite clear at the higher level, but may not be so clear at the lower level. For instance, higher level people advance in the Tao and become more humble, but their humility may not be perceived as such. They see the Tao as a smooth and easy path, but it may not look that way to those at the lower level. They also see virtue as being like an open and fertile valley, and they realize there's much more internal work to be done. Low-level people cannot comprehend this. So, to them, it seems like high-level people are inactive and change their approach frequently as if they cannot make up their minds. So there's actually a lot in that middle section to chew on, to digest, and hopefully to integrate into everyday living as well. It is not so important for higher level cultivators to be obvious in their work on themselves. The important thing is that they do the work. And this brings us to the last section, the concluding section. And it's all about the great square, the great vessel, the great music, the great image. So these are attributes of greatness in the Tao that higher level individuals aspire to and therefore emulate. So how can we paraphrase this in a way that makes sense with modern verbiage? So here's my suggestion. The simple truth is that high-level people emulate the Tao. They know the Tao is both exact and nurturing, so they demand much from themselves while treating others gently. They know the Tao is patient, so they build themselves up gradually without trying to rush anything. They know the Tao cannot be seen or heard, so they keep a low profile and remain quiet. They know the Tao excels in giving and completing everything, so they give to everyone while completing every task to perfection. All of this together is exactly how they are able to elevate to a higher level. And this concluding section gives us a strong hint as to how we can tie the end of this chapter back to the beginning. Remember, proper understanding of the Tao Te Ching means that every chapter can be seen as one whole thing, a complete thought, where the end wraps back to the beginning. So we call that full circle. And the question is, how do we connect the end of this chapter back to its beginning to really get the essence of the Tao? For this particular chapter, I want to start with the last part of it that we have just looked at in the paraphrase. So in the last lines of Tao Te Ching 41, these are the last two lines that we have. It is only the Tao that excels in giving and completing everything. So that's the very end. Right before this, Laozi talks about how the Tao doesn't have form, it doesn't have shape, it is not visible, it cannot be seen or heard, etc. So this is essentially Laozi highlighting the power of the Tao. How so? Well, despite being formless, soundless, and nameless, the Tao still gives life to all, meaning all the myriad things, and completes everything from movements in the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, to personal interactions that you have with the people around you. The Tao is everywhere. The Tao does everything. The Tao doesn't wish for anything, doesn't try to do anything, and yet it is excelling in absolutely completing everything that we can see, and a lot more we cannot see. So now we want to connect this back to the beginning. It then becomes clear that Laozi is trying to say that the Tao is so powerful that it can do everything despite not seeming to be there. It becomes clear that this is what high-level people already understand and realize about the Tao. Intuitively, high-level people know that there's this thing, whatever it is, that's behind everything. It's incredibly powerful. It's not a person. It's a force beyond force. It's a principle beyond all principles. That realization is the reason why high-level people hear about the Tao and it resonates with them powerfully. So from the last part of the chapter to the first part, this is the reason for the powerful resonation. So the question now is on all of us, is on you, it's on me. The question is, how about you? Do you have a similar understanding that although the Tao cannot be seen or touched, it is nevertheless infinitely powerful? And with that understanding, can you resonate with the Tao teachings when you come across them? That is the question. Now, we're talking full circle, so we have to take care of the other part too. As you're thinking about that question, circle back to the last line. Resonating with the Tao naturally will lead to practicing the Tao diligently, making it part of your life. So it goes back the other way. Here is the full circle. Now, there are numerous aspects of doing this, to practicing the Tao diligently, and we distilled all of them into the 12 signs of the high-level individual. The details are in the recording of the previous sections. If you missed it, I think that it will be very beneficial to go back to YouTube and take a look at the recordings. I think you may find it to be very helpful. So here's the bottom line, everybody. The 12 signs of the high-level individual, the 12 characteristics, those are not really difficult to do. Every single one of them is not a difficult challenge. Laozi points out, though, that, hey, remember, high-level people are the ones that can do it diligently, that can do it consistently, day in and day out. When you fall from, when you are not quite at the high level, when you're just at the mid-level, that is characterized by following the Tao sometimes, forgetting about the Tao other times. So the real difficulty is to be consistent every day. So then the final question, similar to the question I asked at the end of the previous slide, related to that, is, are you able to establish the same consistency in your own life? If you can, then yes, you can claim complete understanding of this chapter. You really do get it. You get the Tao in a way that probably nobody else around you is able to replicate. It would be rare to be able to get the Tao to that extent, but then if you get it to that extent, you are 上士. You are the high-level individual, and my hat is off to you. You deserve all the respect from other Tao cultivators who are trying to rise to the same level. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.